So we've talked about trying to develop some patterns from your original artwork. So here's my original artwork that was ink and a stick and pastel chalk that I added. So what you want to do is get a wee template as the shape and then create that on in your sketchbook. You might want to do a couple of those. And within those, you could do a colour wash if you want to start with, but you don't have to. But what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to choose an artwork and choose an area of that artwork. So you could at this stage, if you wanted to have, you know, like the equivalent, the negative of that, so you could maybe highlight the area, might be quite a nice way to do it. So you would end up seeing, you know, a little section like that. And that might help you focus your eye in. I think that would be quite a good idea. But once I come into here, I'm very interested in these stripes and the angle of the lines that I've got. So what I would be doing is in my square that's here, I'm literally going to be deciding to create my stripes that are coming from there. I've got a section coming down here and my stripes here, and I've got a stripe here. And within that, I've got thick lines as well. So probably at this stage, I've also got this lovely green area that's chalky. So then you could directly, you know, bring that in to your pattern idea in your square. You know, this could become a green section in your square. And then I've got some really thick, lovely thick lines from the ink. So you could do the ink again if you want, but you could use a different sort of tool. This would be that nice water soluble pencil that I have. And what I'm going to do, I'm just trying to look at this, and I'm going to bring a really quite a thick black line. So we're wanting a suggestion of pattern you're developing from your work, your original creative work that you've done. I'm going to bring in my tiny bit of green that's in here as well. And also at this stage, you can start to kind of be a bit freer and have artistic content, kind of artistic license. It's your design that you're doing, but straight away I'm quite liking the look of that. I was going to add the red, but I'm not sure if I'm going to actually, but I do like a bit more of the kind of grey, the original grey. So what I might do is just see if I can find a bit more grey, and I'm just going to add in a bit of grey as well. So that's what you want to be doing. And like I've said before, you're kind of deciding, you know, your wee colour palette here. So here we've definitely got grey, which I'm going to bring in a bit more of as well. So I'd bring in some stripes of grey at this point, maybe just to replace the pinky colour that I don't really want. And then you'd have your green box in there as well. And then you'd have your bit of your black. And like we've said before, this you'd probably want to do with the water soluble. This we've said before, you would maybe come up with your colours at this point that you want it to be in your box as well. So you might want to just make that your colour there. And when you're starting to really get to that point, you want to make sure you're maybe starting to record. That's emerald, perhaps stone, might call that, and I might call that soot. You know, might decide to kind of call them quite nice names. So then what I would do is I would look at what I've created in this box, and then I might even think about cutting it down even more. So the next box, I'm just focusing on this bit. Also, what you might want to do is think about really sectioning off an area and actually creating a repeat stripe, which is developed from your original artwork. Remember, you've got the journey to get to that point. So it's all about experimentation, seeing where it takes you, having a bit of freedom, not trying to be perfect, and actually just having a little bit of fun with it. And what you're wanting to do is create lovely patterns that you can apply to your sleeves. Because once you get to that point, you could then decide, I'm going to draw in my sleeve, even on the same page in your sketchbook. So you would draw around that. And then you can start to see, you know, if you were creating this section here, you could start to decide, right, actually, on my sleeve, I'm going to create my sections coming in here. And that's how we're going to do it. So it's actually quite far removed from your original source, but it's definitely inspired and comes from your original artworks, which is what we're looking at. We're also wanting to kind of simplify it, because what we want to do is use the textile techniques to create it on your page. So you would then decide, once you create it and bring it onto your actual sleeve, you know, you're starting to think about the lines that you're adding in here. And you might want to think then about your background colour that you want for your sleeve. and this whole section might become green, or your whole sleeve might become green, or sections of it might become green. So that also is you starting to think about the base colour of your garment piece itself, because we're not necessarily always going to be working on a white sleeve, which is what we've drawn around on the page. And you might find you actually decide to be, you know, your artistic license just brings you in and adds those colours, that lovely green that you want. And then what you'd want to do is start to annotate it and think about stitches, things we've talked about. So we've got maybe vinyl sections. So it might be emerald vinyl section. And then we might want to kind of look in here even deeper and decide there's a little row, and we want to bring in, remember all the things we're going to be looking at in our textile techniques. We bring in some hand stitch as well. There might be some hand stitch areas, and think about how we're going to add this. And then this might be a section, it's probably too big a section for Bondo Web, I think, but some of the stripes definitely could be Bondo Web sections. So I'd maybe suggest the black possibly. So the black fabric, Bondo Web. And remember what I said, the Bondo Web, sorry, needs to then have a stitch to make sure it's definitely secured. So you might want to think about your eyelash stitch perhaps, or the chain stitch, something that maybe links to your artwork earlier on. So it's kind of quite free, might seem a bit vague, but have a go, see how you get on designing some patterns from your original artwork that you can then see going into your final sleeves.